Hello, everybody, and welcome back again to Unexpected Awesome. This is hoping to be the kickoff for a series of short videos describing, well, what's considered the popular theme of February, that is, love. I like to look at it from a perspective, cinematically and story-wise, not necessarily the romantic side of it, but how it's a part of us, but not necessarily the greatest part. I'd like to kick off this discussion with perhaps a movie that you might not have heard about. The 2014 neo-western Swelter is a pretty interesting film. You could consider it a rebranding of the concept of High Noon. A sheriff has to prove himself to the townsfolk that doesn't trust him, that thinks he's ultimately too traditionalist, as his past comes back to haunt him. For he's an amnesiac former bank robber who robbed a casino. Now, the gang that he was once a part of is now back, and they are going to terrorize that town until he reveals where the money is, despite the fact he doesn't know where it is. The main antagonists of the film are pretty standard villains. Among them include violators, thieves, and jealous former romantic rivals. But I think the most interesting character within them isn't actually really a villain. He's an antagonist who undergoes a sort of transformation into somebody who almost becomes heroic. He's a character played by none other than Jean-Claude Van Damme, and funnily enough, this movie doesn't have Jean-Claude do any martial arts whatsoever. Not a single leg split and not a single kick is thrown by this character. The most he ever does action-wise is face off a small gaggle of police officers with the gang, as well as blow open a wall in a prison with what looks like a Nerf gun. But beyond that, he doesn't really do much of action. No, the moment I'd like to focus on is a moment later on in the film, right at the beginning of the third act, before the town really starts burning, and before the people really start realizing that they kinda need their sheriff. Van Damme's character is a character who's very much clearly regretting his past. He sees the company that he kept and the companies that he's keeping, and he's much more disappointed in his past choices and unhappy with the way things are going. He's inside of the one place in town that's really where people can go for fun or just sitting down, the bar. And in going there, he meets a kindred spirit, a bar owner who's sort of thinking about the meaning of her life. And she does something pretty interesting. She goes to a glass case above her bar where the most expensive bottle of whiskey is placed, and she then proceeds to pour 2 glasses on the house. They strike up a conversation and begin to talk about the concept of being happy with one's life. Eventually it gets to the point where they talk about and come to the conclusion that, you know what, you can make mistakes and regrets in your life, but what matters is your future and how you learn from your past mistakes. They're just about to toast to it, drink to it, and potentially pursue something a little bit more personal until our main antagonist is called off the screen to try to redeem himself, to which he's tragically cut down. The film ends pretty standardly. The sheriff manages to regain a bit of his memory, as well as fight off the former gang that he was once associated with, and the townsfolk finally accept him. Hell, it's even pretty beautiful in how the camera pans out and sees the money that he hid behind, with everybody not even caring about it. The MacGuffin is no longer important. The real conflict has been resolved. But I think the real editing and story writing magic that really caught me off guard was the last scene in the film. It shows the bartender lady at her bar, wiping it down, going back to business as usual with a new outlook on life. And in that glass case where she kept her most premium goods with the highest profit margin, she's replaced it with that one glass. She's found something more important than money, possibility of what could have been. It's an interesting scene and role in the story that Van Damme and the actress plays is simply because of the fact that it's not with the main story, but it ties with it. Basically, it's about redemption. The story is about a former thief ultimately showing himself to be a man of the law and protecting the people that he would have once exploited. And we also see that sort of take hold in Van Damme's character. But I think most importantly, it manages to do a surprisingly sincere job of showing us the possibility of a romance that never blossomed. It's believable, and it's kind of sad when he dies, because you know this beautiful thing that could be, now won't be. And I think it's worth noting that Van Damme is not known for his dramatic prowess, but this is honestly the best acting that I ever think I've seen him do. I've seen films with classically well-known actors of high repute in the last year, including that ultimately failed to convince me of any dramatic stakes, but Van Damme inside of this no-budget little western managed to do that. And I just think that's worthy of note. This is Pontius, signing off.